We are all here. We do not have any attendees, but we will go through all of what we need to do. So it is 9:04. I will now call to order this April 28th, 2022 regular session of the Medfield School Committee. We are holding this meeting in remote, so all votes will need to be taken in roll call. So beginning with the roll call, I will go for Anna Mae first.
Here.
And then Michelle Kirkby.
Here.
Okay. Jessica Riley here. Don't want to forget myself. I seem to do that. Leo Brem.
Here.
Okay. And Tim Knight. Unmute, Tim.
Here.
Thanks, Tim. Okay. So as I said, this meeting is being held remotely. It is recorded and will be posted to the Medfield TV YouTube channel. So specifically, our agenda item today is to decide as a committee if we will co-sponsor Article 18 of the annual town meeting warrant for 2022. And I will read the text of the article, and then we can have a discussion about whether we want to co-sponsor this, and I will let you know kind of the discussions that Jeff and I have had with the select board. And then we will take public input if there happens to be anybody in the public who comes into the meeting and would like to do that, and then we will take a vote. So Article 18 is to see if the town will vote to appropriate and or transfer from available funds the Municipal Buildings Capital Stabilization Fund, or otherwise, a sum of $250,000 to be expended under the direction of the School Building Committee for paying the costs of a feasibility study, including but not limited to public outreach, obtaining soil borings, topographical studies, land surveys, wetland surveys, preliminary site development plans, schematic designs, architectural and engineering designs, cost estimates, and construction alternatives, and any incremental or related services for the addition and or renovation to or replacement of the Dale Street Elementary School, located at 45 Adams Street, Medfield, Massachusetts, 02052, or do or act anything in relation thereto. So, Jeff, do you want to speak to kind of what this article does for a new school building committee, whether that is the committee that is somehow enacted at town meeting through the new bylaw that is there, or if that bylaw does not pass, then it would essentially the original school building kind of bylaw would stand, but this would be something that we are allotting with the selectmen jointly to the school building committee. So do you want to?
Sure. I mean, it's really a timing issue. So
right.
What it allows us to do, or the school building committee, I should say, to do, is that if whether we get accepted into MSBA or not in December, it allows the school building committee to have a sum of money to start working on the project instead of waiting till the next annual town meeting to get allocation. So essentially, what you can do is you can start working on all the things in the article that Jess had mentioned, maybe hiring an OPM, those types of things. And then that will get you to a certain point, probably until the annual town meeting, in which there'll be an allocation of additional money to finish off the feasibility study. So it prevents a 6 or 7 month lag in the process and getting the process moving, so that we'd be able to, as a school building committee, would be able to just kind of keep moving and get the ball rolling, as opposed to just sitting, waiting for MSBA and not doing anything moving forward. So it's really, I mean, I think the good part about it is it's for the SBC. The SBC is, so if there's no SBC, there's no allocation of money, there's no spending of money. So only the SBC can do this. The school department can't do it. You guys can't do it. The board of selectmen can't. No one can use this money unless there's a finalized SBC in place.
And the way the article is written, and the way the municipal stabilization, capital stabilization fund works is that we will allot this amount of money. It has to pass town meeting by 2/3 of vote, because that's how the bylaw is written, that when we distribute money from the fund, we have to, or put money into it through tax revenue and then distribute it, it has to pass by 2/3. The select board does not seem to have much concern that it would pass. But whatever we do not spend, or whatever the school building committee does not spend, because this is again, not us, we'll roll back into that fund. And then we will reallocate the appropriate amount of money that needs to happen for a true feasibility study and continuing on with whatever that process looks like next May. From either, again, the capital stabilization fund or through a debt override or debt exclusion override, or however that happens. But this does give us just that stopgap. The select board is, I think rightfully, they want to know that we would vote in the affirmative to co-sponsor with them. And then they will vote to co-sponsor with us just before town meeting, should we decide to make this, to decide to sponsor this. And that is really in the spirit of showing, and I think this kind of continuing effort, that the town and the school are working toward this project hand in hand, and that we are trying to establish ourselves less as two separate entities, but as one entity with aligned interests. So I think
I would also add, Jess, too, that initially, my initial reaction was, isn't this something the SBC should be doing,
right,
and not the Board of Selectmen and not the school committee? But after talking to Christine and Gus and getting their perspective on it and the reasoning behind it, I think Mike Marcucci had worked on this prior to stepping off the Board of Selectmen. The timing issue made a lot of sense. It made sense for us to be able to have that, the funding to get the process started and not have a lag in anything in terms of OPMs or whatever we need to spend money on. And that would get us to the annual town meeting next year.
And I think that the reason that we're voting on it today and we haven't, is that it ended up being a little bit of a ghost warrant, as we've kind of explained it. It's kind of like two ships passing in the night, that Christine and the warrant committee had set aside this amount of money to make it happen, and then assumed that the selectmen and the school committee would vote on it and sponsor it. But there was something within the connection of, you guys should be sponsoring it, that we never quite, both the selectmen and the school committee never realized that we needed to vote on that, or that this amount of money was kind of there until the warrant came out and we realized who needed to be sponsoring it, right? Like, you can put placeholders in the warrant, and then the warrant's published, and both of our bodies all of a sudden were like, oh, okay, we really actually need to take a formal vote, because at this point it seems as though it had been really intuitive, but there was a little bit of a disconnect around communication on that one. So, and like Jeff said, he and I met with Gus and had a very extensive conversation about kind of this whole process on Tuesday. And after that conversation, going into it, I felt very much like, I don't know that I want this particular hot potato. Is this really something we should be doing? Is it our responsibility? And thinking the SBC should, in whatever capacity they end up being, they should really be taking responsibility. But again, it is the timing issue, and really looking to, no matter what the MSBA decides in December about whether to invite us in or not, and no matter what we decide to do with that invitation, should we even receive it, any school building committee will need access to funds. So I'm very comfortable voting in the affirmative for this. Very comfortable, much more comfortable than I was last week.
Just one simple question as we discuss it. Can we, I'm reading it. I just think there's a few items in there that are worthy of, discussion, but can you just post it, or does everybody have it in front of them? Like, can somebody?
It's on the agenda.
I know, I'm looking at it. Can somebody just share a screen, just so as we're talking, it's just, to me, I keep going back. There's little nits in here.
Jeff, can you share your screen? Because that seems very multitasking to me. Or does anybody have, who's co-host on this one? Or am I it? All right.
You might be it. Michael, do you have it on your screen? I don't have it actually up on mine.
I don't either. Because I write my scripts out. Hold on. Let me see if I can find the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, not critical, you gotta just pull it up if everyone has it. And if you give me rights, I can do it, but,
All right. Hold on. Andrea, do you happen to have it up? Because if you do, I'll pull you over.
Yeah, Andrea's not in the office right now.
I can pull it
But
up.
she's on. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's her phone she's on.
God love her. Thanks, Andrea. All right. I'll share my.
Tim powers?
Hmm?
Can you give Tim the power to share?
I think so.
Yes, you definitely can.
Thank you. This is like now a
so, and I'll even, just as we, Jess, I'll give you, as you pull it up, like just two comments I have, is, they say the term expended, like just how would it be used, and like, I think the list is okay. I think, it's hard to say how long this would last, but that's, it all
I guess.
depends how, but to me, they use the term public outreach. I think it's more than public outreach. It does at the end say, and any incidental or related services. But I'm thinking like early stages, it's almost like a consultant or somebody that can collaborate with this new SBC. And initially, it's a study around the conditions that are required to achieve a 2/3 majority. Like,
so
you know,
so
it's
you're
almost
absolutely right,
not
Tim.
high, but it's-
Okay, well,
Yeah.
so this is where my
But I want to
concern.
clarify something for Tim first. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So Tim, we do not, when the SBC is formed, that is the time at which we can advocate, through our own membership or through meetings and then statements to them, how the SBC will spend this money. At this point, these are kind of these items that they could spend on are giving them the full range of the ability to spend this money on these things, but we cannot mandate to them at this point.
I'm not asking for that.
Yeah,
And
okay.
the only reason, I'm not trying to be different, the only reason I wanted to share it, right? If I want to co-sponsor, which high level I do, high level, and somebody starts nitpicking at what the SBC can and cannot do with that money, I think it's important that the warrant reads in a way that's consistent with the spirit of what we think is going to happen. So my
Jess, can I
question is as basic as possible. If we're not doing public outreach, but we do need help better understanding what gets us 2/3 majority, and it's not necessarily soil borings, topographical studies, like that, all that stuff's way down the line here.
Oh, you're
The
absolutely
most
right.
important part, is somebody going to raise their hand and say, hey, you're doing something that's not in the spirit of this warrant article. So that's all.
Michael,
that's
you
really
have
what I'm
something
thinking.
Yeah. Can I
just
just jump in?
clarifying at this point. Yeah.
So it's
And
going
then
to
I'll
work
get
two
to you,
ways.
Joe,
Yeah,
okay?
Tim, it could go two ways, right? If we do get accepted into the MSBA project, right? If our SOI gets accepted, then we have to follow the MSBA regulations, which means that we can't hire a consultant or OPM until we go through the process that MSBA has. So that's the first one, right? If the if we don't get accepted into the MSBA, now you have that funding, and the new building committee will have a say on when to hire a consultant, right, to use these funds.
So
That's
so
to-
far, so good. stay on Pat for a minute, if you don't mind. When would we know about if our SOI is accepted?
In late November, December.
So just suppose you had a $250,000 fund allocated. That has nothing to do, it may be used, whether or not we get through MSBA, and there was $50,000 of it that was spent of the town's money to help better understand what it takes to get a 2/3 majority. Would that be problematic with proceeding with the MSBA, or are these just two separate? It just says the pool is now $200,000. It's no longer $250,000 if we were, applying it towards MSBA.
So then at town meeting, you would have to go back to town meeting to make up the difference. One thing that you need to know now is even if you go through the MSBA process, the MSBA is not going to fund a second feasibility study. So the feasibility study, right, would be all on the town's budget, because the MSBA already funded their feasibility study for this project. So you would take that 200,000, you would have to figure out what the additional cost would be. Then you would have to go to town meeting to fund that portion of the cost.
That is an understanding that the warrant
So-
committee has.
Right, and that's kind of my understanding as well. The 250 isn't necessarily the entire feasibility study.
It's not.
Right, so my,
And I would be
it
very
gets us-
surprised if they spent even all that. I suspect we'll
Right.
be turning
Gets
a
us-
punch of it.
But who knows what,
Yeah.
what things go on, but it gets us along the way. We
Mhm.
may be needing to go back to the town most likely for, the full feasibility. I'm just saying is, if this summer they had a consultant or some, they wanted to spend some of this money to do some research and collaborative whiteboarding around, hey, here's the, these are the things you really want, but this is the more controversial, these are the things that are going to cause you to, not get a 2/3 majority. I think that would be a good place to start if I was part of the SBC. Like, it would just be like, hey, we need some help within the town. This is broader even than the school. It's like, what is it we need for the town to say yes?
I think this
Okay.
is worthy of putting on our agenda, like these specific kind of things that we would advocate for with a new SBC on our agenda in a meeting in June. Because I think I want to discuss this more.
I'm just saying, does the language do we need to ask to tweak this language in order to accommodate that? Or do we have any issues with doing that based on the way the language reads?
I don't think so.
I think Tim's point is a good one.
Yeah.
We don't want to be in a situation where the SBC is acting one way and then they get called out because it didn't fit the scope of the warrant, right? I mean, the article. I think that's a really
That's
good
all I'm
point.
saying.
Yeah, and I think it probably, I think maybe the town's council should weigh in on that. Maybe that's something that we can send an email out today about, just to get clarification. I think the definition is broad enough, so that's not an issue, but I think it's also in a point that, we don't want to be in the middle of something and then have someone call out what we're doing because it didn't fit the scope.
I
Yeah, like,
understand
it's
that.
almost-
So
I could give you proposed words in the email after,
Okay.
but it
We
was
do
just such a
have-
minor tweak, but it just says that captures that idea. Like,
We
I
would
put,
probably have to make an amendment to this article on the floor
Right.
and
so I'm
But Tim is saying is he wants more inclusive language in the article to give us more flexibility, is what I'm hearing.
yeah,
for
I'm new to
public
this. though.
outreach.
Like, I'm new to this because,
Yeah.
there's also language as to how the SBC is being formed they're working on, as I understand it, tomorrow, right? Like, they're still tweaking, if I'm not mistaken, or is that still?
so this
is
is
this-
different than the bylaw that the SBC committee is coming up with,
I
right?
understand.
So that they're tweaking, but they're looking at like a long-term higher kind of policy as opposed to what would happen for this particular project.
Sure. So, and I'm just saying, are you saying we are not, it's too late to tweak this language anyways? 'Cause it just, to
It's
me,
not
it
too
seems
late.
an
It's never too
unnecessary
late.
turn whole town.
So just one
It
point.
makes things a little awkward.
I think looking at the article, again, it does say paying for the cost of including but not limited to. And I think that's the key language, right? Including but not limited to. So if we did something as what Tim had said, the SBC allocates funds. I know that the school committee has talked numerous times about having a third-party survey to seeing what's going on. Why did people vote no, et cetera, et cetera. If the SBC chooses to do that, given that language, and again, I'm not an attorney, but given that language, it says not limited to, I think it fits into that. But I think you probably want to get an opinion from Mark. Just
Public outreach is number one item in there. I mean, that's going to cover any kind of surveys or research.
That's
I
my
don't have to be
implication, but I
difficult.
understand what Tim is saying.
Yes.
Just cover, and I
It's
think a
so-
simple email.
There's
Yeah.
so much, like, everything you do is a lot of like scrutiny, and I think we just want to,
100%.
so that's, I mean, I agree. It is also fairly open at the end, says, and any incidental related services. I just, when I look at it, I think the natural first step would be, it's more than a survey. That's all I'm saying. It's because it could be working with whoever's on that SBC.
I hear what you're saying.
Right.
So
Yeah,
the
I get
town
it.
the town's on the hook to spend money no matter what, Tim. So I guess what we're saying is, even if SBC adopts our project again, right? And then, like they said, we are going to still have to come up with money, even if we can try to reuse some of the stuff that we already did, right? Which is one of my main concerns. One of my main concerns is just in general, I feel like we're going too fast and we're not stepping back quick enough to look at the larger picture as a town. But that is on the selectmen, on the select board. But as a school committee member, I know that we still maintain to have some really serious issues to solve as far as space and facilities go. And the feeling that I'm getting from the feedback meeting we had, I feel like it's too soon. I'm not hearing any advisement from the current permanent building committee, which should be weighing in on Dale because that is a permanent building. I'm not hearing much of anything except for Gus saying that 95% of the town thinks we need a new building. But what he's not saying is that only 35% of them are willing to pay for it. So I feel like that those items together are a concern of mine. And then now with Hospital Hill becoming more a reality, we weren't allowed to use Hospital Hill build numbers in our projections in the first building project. So now that's going to have to be taken into consideration through the next feasibility process. And I feel like the one thing that we can do as a school committee is have a really strong understanding of what we need to operate our school department, right? And I think we'd feel silly if we went through this process, renovated the existing Dale building just to get a new building, and it's too small already, or again. And we're not solving the list of problems that we identified in the first process, right? A campus-based elementary program, enough space for all of our breakout rooms, and and sped spaces and music spaces and everything else. So, and we get through all this, spend $50 million on a building that's not as big, only covers 2 grades, and we're still kind of back where we were because we're going to be asking for portable classrooms, right? And I know that nobody here wants to do that, right?
This is a good conversation, Leo, because although it is kind of separate from, do we help allow that process to begin by giving access to funds for whoever that is and the permanent planning, and to make this happen, right? So that we've got a funding issue today. Do we give the seed money to make that a possibility sooner than May 2023?
And I guess
But I
that's
think
where
you're
I'm a
right, and
little
this is a
fuzzy
lot
on
of the
who's getting this
hold on a
money.
second, Lynn.
Yeah.
Hold on. But I want to let you know that this is a conversation that we have also gone into with Gus, and that this is this is something that the select board is also thinking about. And I think that our interests in in that area in terms of really looking at long-term, how this goes, what our school buildings look like, what, there is definitely a lot of thought going into that as well. And I see those conversations continuing as part of this less town, less gown, more all of us together working towards a long-term plan without kind of putting each other at loggerheads. But today's meeting and today's article is truly about how do we fund any of this work without waiting for a year. So,
Leo, I actually hear you and agree
I
with a
hear you
lot
too. I
of
mean,
what you're saying. But where I just struggle a little is if we didn't, support this, at least as the school committee, and you're saying, I think, I forget again, we want to move fast, but we want to be thoughtful, right? I
Right.
mean, that's the high level sentiment. I agree, this is a broader townwide issue, but I suspect that some of this funding could be used to continue to look at it as a townwide issue. Like I don't see where we're better off by waiting. At least there's a process, there's an SBC that's going to be formed, and they're going to begin working. It's nice that it would have access to funding. That's my opinion. Alternative, like what would you counter with if we weren't doing this? That's where I'm.
I guess the number 250,000 sounds arbitrary to me. It sounds like it's earmarked from somewhere, right? Which means because that's not what's going to cost to do this work.
And the
So
warrant committee.
So my understanding of that, I'm sorry, my understanding of that, Leo, is that it is derived from the fact that the permanent building committee members suggested that it would be at least $500,000 for the next feasibility study, based on the fact that we could use some of the materials and some of the what came out of the first feasibility, and that the 250 would be half of that, and then the other half would be annual town meeting. So I think that's where it came from. I'm not sure if the numbers are all going to work out, but I think that's my understanding. That's how the 250 came about. And
that is helpful, just to know that the permanent building committee was involved in some aspect of this, and it's just not SBC and Board of Selectmen and us kind of going 250. We'll pull 250 out. That's
and in fact,
number.
we didn't put this in, right? Like this number came from Christine and became a placeholder that the warrant committee also vetted and felt was a good number to kind of pull out of the municipal capital stabilization fund.
I
So
one thing
it came from somewhere. It wasn't like the classic stake in the ground. Yeah.
So Leo, I'll talk a little more.
And then I actually, Tim, Anime has been very patiently waiting. So go ahead. Thanks. You gotta.
Sorry. So I am in favor of seeding this money just to get it going if we need it.
Mhm.
However, I'm sitting on Tim's point in terms of the spirit of this, and I think he's wise to think eyes wide open because we don't know what could be construed. So what is the intention going into this? And I'm wondering if it would be wise for us as a school committee to just, when this article is up, to make note of that publicly, because we are having this discussion here. I don't know how many people are going to watch it, so, and for the Board of Selectmen to already have a robust discussion, we are now having our robust discussion, but it would be great for the public to know that we are having this robust discussion. So perhaps when this article comes up, school committee could make a statement in that vein of the intention and the spirit of this. So again, it is publicly stated how we feel, and we're just not, laying back, letting things happen. So that would be my
I would be happy to do that if the committee would like me to do that, or one of you could. I don't. I will be there, and I am happy to kind of put together a statement.
I think we would need to prepare like a short
yes, that's
statement No, it's just, I think we need to be succinct. We are so broken in so many respects that, anything kind of, we really need to kind of rein it in and just be succinct and just be, that I agree. The spirit of this partnership with the select board, I think, is moving in the right direction. But I do think school committee has to have to voice its opinion or its reaction to this because the public has not heard from us.
That's fine. Would the committee feel comfortable if Anna Mae and I worked on a statement over the weekend? I know Anna Mae won't be able to be at the meeting.
I'm going to change my plans. Whatever. It's fine.
I can't go now. So
Right, yeah. You stay home. So do you want to work on a statement together? Do you want me to, what would the committee like
I
to
mean, I
have
support it. You guys-
happen? Is that something you want me to do? Is that something you want
someone can capture
somebody
this
else?
conversation, the essence of the conversation, our concerns. I'm echoing what Anna Mae said 100%. I think that's what's hanging out in the back of my head here.
Okay.
That here we are, we're 6 months later from the failed vote. It was very tumultuous in the town, and now coming back to the well again. And that's kind of what it sounds like and what it feels like. And even though, I guess, communicating how we feel, communicating how we're going to look at this approach and maintain to, at least from my perspective, I think we need to maintain to prioritize what's important for the education of our kids and not just focus 100% on whether or not we can get 2/3. Because if you can get 2/3 to vote a building that's not going to do any good, then to me, that's just throwing money away. So that's why I'd like to have the conversation about the essence of this to be about long-term planning for all of our schools, not just Dale Street, because Wheelock isn't far behind. And if there's going to be projected space constraints based on new buildings or requirements from for pre-K, that those things are on the radar and that there's a plan, right? And whether it's MSBA funded or not, that doesn't matter. We can spend money, and MSBA can only reimburse the stuff that they're going to reimburse. And that can be fine. We don't have to be painted into that box all the time, just about reimbursement. You just have to be able to allocate percentages of what you're spending and what that is. So if you're going to build an early childhood center attached to Dale that's not part of Dale, you just have to put a percentage on it, and that percentage won't be reimbursed, right? That percentage of the project. So things of that nature, we don't have to feel like we're pigeonholed just because MSBA, and we should take every dollar we can get from them too. So, but I feel like that's the messaging is that we're being smart about this and continuing to prioritize what's important. Not that 2/3 isn't important town. I don't mean to take that away, but I guess I just don't want it to be, you get what you pay for. And we all know this, right? So, it's terrible to open up a building that's already too small. So
I like that, Leo. I like that a lot.
So, I mean, Jess, you suggested if you two were to work on it, I have all the trust in the world that it
yeah, I do too.
represent the spirit of what we've done.
I think that's a great idea too. I think Anna Mae, and I think having this statement, just because I think that's what, at least for me, you hit the nail on the head. That's what's bothering me. That's it's like this vote that we're voting on, and it just without any kind of explanation or framework, I guess. So.
And I have to say that was initially my concern going into it, and I'm glad that you externalized that, Anna Mae, because once Jeff and I kind of did have a longer conversation with Gus about this, it did feel a lot better to be co-sponsoring and understanding where this money was going and why we were requesting it. But you're right, I do think it would be better to externalize this conversation and to make sure that the town understands why we are doing this specifically. So why don't you and I quickly, I mean, it can be a paragraph. I don't expect that I will have time to do that today, but I could have time to do it tomorrow. And then you and I can vet back and forth And then if the committee would like me to, I can present it as informational items at the, just before the ATM at our meeting, or I can simply distribute it to you as part of the public record, knowing that this is something coming out of this meeting. What would you, I don't want to kind of wordsmith or, put a full, like, we do have this meeting, but it's not on the agenda. We would have to add it if you all want to have input or wordsmithing into it, or you can trust Anna Mae and I to come up with something that reflects the spirit of this conversation.
I think, I would love a record I don't know if we get a transcript of even this meeting, because I think, Jeff's explanation of his conversation with Christine as to why we're doing this, that's a beautiful piece. What Tim was talking about in terms of the spirit, that was a beautiful piece. What Leah was talking about in terms of long-term planning and being mindful, that's a beautiful piece. So if we could get those three elements succinctly, I think that would be super duper helpful.
Okay. So again, I asked the question, if those 3 points from this meeting were to be the body of what Anna Mae and I would develop, is the committee comfortable with either she or I presenting that, or both of us at school, at the ATM as part of a statement? And I would ask Scott to give us that time to say, or to make a statement within the co-sponsorship kind of discussion of the article.
Jeff, I see you thinking. What are you thinking about?
No, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I really do. I think to your point, it's great for the school committee to make that comment on town meeting floor, so that the folks that aren't watching, we have one attendee, and it's Andrea right now, and we have very limited viewership of the meeting after that. It's good for them to hear. It's good for them to hear, because I think if you're someone, and I think we learned it during the last process, not everyone is engaged, right? And everyone's busy. And I think if you're someone that really hasn't paid attention or was wondering what has happened since November, this is a great way to frame why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that will be very well received by the community, and it's certainly needed.
Would this be something that perhaps, again, my time is extremely limited today, but would this be something that we would feel comfortable if, or would we be able to do this if we did an Aspen to our community saying that, that annual town meeting is Monday evening, so I would probably not be able to release this until Monday anyway, or Sunday, I don't know. And that we are co-sponsoring or that we have voted and we expect the selectmen to co-sponsor Article 18, which would allow this, and then give these 3 points from this meeting, which has, which is public record at this point, but at least it also then allows us to hit yet another group of people who may not see ATM, may not know what it is or why we are sponsoring it. So would that be something that the committee would be comfortable with?
I think
that's
that's
a good idea.
good idea.
Great
I
idea.
think mixed.
Do you see any
And
problems with
Michelle-
that legally? Either Jeff or Michael? I don't want to be.
As long as you're just talking about the date and time and that type of.
Date,
just the
time,
process.
and our discussion.
Or maybe just link the
Time.
video. I think, because then we're paraphrasing. I think we save that
And-
for the floor.
Yeah. I
Okay.
agree.
Could you mention the article though? Could you say the school committee is
Article 18 and
sponsoring the
the,
article? So that
Co-sponsor.
people know that this is happening, and people recognize
Factual,
that,
yeah,
like,
you need factual
something is
stuff.
happening for the new school at town meeting.
Yes.
so I can draft that as well this weekend. That should be a
Tim,
pretty easy one.
are you not in favor of that? Tim, were you
So I
saying?
think as long as it's factual, I just don't want anything that is a perception of poisoning.
Yeah,
the
no,
well.
I don't want churn.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't.
I hate
you can't
churn.
promote. Yeah, you can't promote. All you
Yeah,
can do is
not
say this is
promoting.
when it's happening, right?
We would
Then
just be
whatever the
saying
outcome of
that,
the vote is today, and here's the article, and we'll share a statement, publicly, like something like that, I think is great. I think that's very thoughtful, and it's a good idea.
Michelle, what are your thoughts on this? You've been a little quiet and hearing this feedback. I'm just curious, as someone who worked so hard in the campaign for the school, what's your take on this from that perspective?
Yeah, sorry, we're doing a little construction right now, so if it gets loud, and that's what it is. I think the really important thing is to show that we are being forward thinking. So echoing what Leo in regards to, we're not just building a building and all of a sudden it's too small. Did Jess and Jeff, I know you talked to Gus and he had some interesting ideas about what we could possibly do going forward in regards to the schools. I'm interested to hear what those are. So yes, I feel like this is a step in the right direction. I think a lot of people are sitting there wondering why nothing is happening. And I feel like this shows that stuff is happening. Right. Stuff has been happening behind the scenes, even if it's a little slow. I think a message from us that our mission and our focus is to be focused on the educational aspect of this, but being aligned with the select board, I think is really important. I think that's a message that we should be continuing to try to move forward as we're looking to build and improve on our schools. So yeah, overall, I feel like steps in the right direction. From a wording standpoint, I wonder if we could add something about being forward thinking in there, in like the hopes that it helps other people start being forward thinking, right? Like the goal isn't just to replace Dale. The goal is to look at our town from the big picture and take a holistic approach in regards to being able to do stuff for our schools going forward, so that 10, 15, 20 years from now, a new group of us isn't sitting here having the same problem, right? Like that's what I see. It's like every 20 years, there's a group that sits here and tries to solve these problems. And then town kicks the can down the road, and all of a sudden new group comes around 20 years later and is, sitting on the same place. So I guess from a standpoint, Leo, I hear what you're saying in regards to like, it feels fast. It doesn't feel fast to me, but I just want to make sure we're having these discussions in regards to kind of like the bigger picture, Hospital Hill, all the stuff that's being built on the other side of town from me. How is that going to affect our schools? Are we focused on just one school? Can we look at Wheelock? Can we look at Memorial? Can we look at these other spaces that we need to be thinking about from an elementary standpoint? So I guess
and I do know that Jeff is in conversation with the hospital committee at this point. We are asking for NESDEC to give us additional projections, knowing now what the possible amount of housing could be and the and what that development would look like, as opposed to, as to what kinds of projections we could see in terms of population. So now that we have kind of a clearer picture around, or that we have the potential to have a clearer picture around that, do you think is that the general gist of the conversation, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry, I'm going to mute myself. This literally is Blake saying, "Where is your kid?" I'm so sorry.
I met with NESDEC this week. They are putting together a study that will take all the information that we've received so far and put together some numbers of what we could have for new students as a result of this. So one of the reasons why Michael and I added the 334 apartments into the SOI was because when Jess and I met with the development committee, this group, that is the project, has some strings attached in terms of the Mass Historical, and because they're reusing the existing building. So one of the things that could happen is, because they're getting certain tax credits, the 3 bedrooms now that I think are 11, or I have it over there in my office, I think it's 11 total, maybe less than that, could jump up to over 30, because that was part of the tax implications and the tax credits that they're going to get. So that obviously has a huge implication if we're looking at, a single digit or 10 or 11 three bedroom apartments, and then that goes to 30. That has a huge impact on what we can do. So that's why Michael and I thought it was important to put that in the new SOI, because that was not, as Leo said earlier, that was not part of the projections in 2017. MSBA did not use that potential as part of the projection. So I think, that that is something that is, I've been here 9 years, and I think the 10 years prior to that, everyone's been talking about Hospital Hill and what's going on there. Well, it looks like something might actually happen there, and it could have an impact to our schools. And it's important for us to plan for that, because we don't want to just kind of put our heads in the sand. And then, as Leo said before, now we need modulars because it's everything we're doing is too small because of all the development up there. So I think we're doing a measured, thoughtful approach on this, and NESDEC will be a great help because they're independent and will tell us exactly what they think the implications will be on this new project.
Okay, so do we feel as a committee that we could bring this issue to a vote right now? Or do we have more discussion around the actual article and co-sponsoring the article, as opposed to these things that we should be putting on as agenda items very specifically in future agendas, right? So that do we feel like we have enough of a handle on the article itself, and that we've elucidated some parts of process that we really need to follow up on, but we could vote for the article, yay or nay? Do we feel like we're ready to bring it to a motion? I'm doing a survey here. Yes, am I getting yeses and thumbs ups? And okay. Do we want to have any additional conversation? I would call for public input at this point, except I have no other attendees. So I will not call for public input at this point. So what I will do, though, is call for a motion and I would like to read the full article again, just to make sure. So do I hear a motion to co-sponsor with the Board of Selectmen Article 18 of the 2022 Annual Town Meeting warrant? This article is to see if the town will vote to appropriate and or transfer from available funds the Municipal Buildings Capital Stabilization Fund or otherwise a sum of $250,000 to be expended under the direction of the School Building Committee for paying the costs of a feasibility study, including but not limited to public outreach, obtaining soil borings, topographical studies, land surveys, wetland surveys, preliminary site development plans, schematic designs, architectural and engineering designs, cost estimates and construction alternatives, and any incremental or related services for the addition and or renovation to or replacement of the Dale Street Elementary School located at 45 Adams Street, Medfield, Mass. 02052, or do or act anything in relation thereto. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve with the caveat that school committee will make a statement affirming the spirit of this article.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Anyone seconding? Second, Michelle? Okay. Because we are in remote, I'm going to have to do a roll call vote. So I'm just going to call on you, and then you need to say your name and I, okay? So I will call on Tim Knight.
Tim Knight, aye.
Okay, and Leo Brem.
Leo Brem, aye.
Okay, Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke.
Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke, yes.
And Michelle Kirkby.
Michelle Kirkby, yes.
Okay, and Jessica Riley, yes. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. And I will inform the select board of that, and they will do their vote on Monday evening while we are meeting in an executive session on those two topics that we've listed. Anna Mae and I will work this weekend on putting together a statement, and we'll present it. And I will also contact Scott McDermott to make sure that we have time on the floor to make that statement. Do I have any other items since posting on 4/27/2022? Jeff?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. And are there any informational items? No? Okay, so our next meeting is currently scheduled for Monday, May 2nd, 2022 at 6 p.m.
Do
And
we know
that,
where yet?
in the
Room
library,
119. Room 119.
room 119. Okay, thank you. And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Anna Mae O'Shea Brooks, so moved. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Thanks, Michelle. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right. So that is just for the record, Michelle Kirkby, Jessica Riley, Leo Brem, Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke, and Tim Knight. The motion passes unanimously and the meeting is adjourned at 9:54 a.m. Thank you as always for your time. I appreciate it. Okay, thanks.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks. Bye.
have a good Friday.
Thank you. Bye, guys.